Tell me why you're here, right now.
I'm here for work. I go through those doors every morning.
You don't look like you work here. Step away from the entrance.
For what reason? I'm on public steps.
Because I said so.
He said you need to tell me why you are here. The officer's voice was flat-clipped, rehearsed, as if the answer had already been decided before the question left his mouth. The man standing on the granite steps of the state courthouse didn't move. He was holding a leather briefcase in his left hand, the handle worn smooth from years of use. His right hand hung open at his side, fingers relaxed visible. The morning air was cold enough to sting his face. A thin wind pushed fallen leaves across the plaza, scraping softly against stone. Somewhere nearby, a patrol radio crackled with static. "I am here for work," the man said. "That's not what I asked," the officer replied. "I asked you to explain your presence here." The blue and red lights from the cruiser washed over the courthouse doors, reflecting back in distorted flashes. People were beginning to arrive for the day. Clerks, attorneys, jurors. Shoes echoed on marble. No one stopped yet, but heads turned. The man took a slow breath. He was wearing a navy overcoat, pressed slacks, polished shoes. Nothing flashy, nothing threatening. He looked past the officer up at the familiar stone seal carved above the entrance. He had walked through those doors almost every weekday for the last 7 years. "I work inside that building," he said calmly. The officer's jaw tightened. "Badge number 22147. Name stitched on the uniform. Palmer." He shifted his weight hand, brushing near his belt. "You don't look like you work here. So I'm going to need you to explain yourself." That sentence hung in the air longer than it should have. Explain yourself. As if existing required justification. As if standing on public steps at 8:12 a.m. was a suspicious act. Traffic hummed behind them. A bus hissed to a stop down the block. The smell of exhaust mixed with cold stone and damp paper from someone's coffee cup nearby. The man opened his briefcase, slightly slow, deliberate, revealing neatly stacked folders stamped with court seals. "Sir, I'm asking you to step away from the entrance," the officer said. "For what reason?" the man asked. "Because I said so." That was the moment the tension shifted. What had started as an uncomfortable interaction hardened into something sharper. The officer's voice grew louder, more authoritative. The man's remained even, measured, the voice of someone used to legal precision. "I am not obstructing anything," the man said. "I am standing where I am allowed to stand." Palmer glanced around. A woman slowed her walk. A man near the curb lifted his phone, not openly yet, but ready. The officer noticed. His shoulders squared. "You people always have a problem following simple instructions," Palmer said. Silence followed. Heavy. Loaded. The man's eyes met the officer's, steady, unblinking. Years of reading case law had taught him how moments like this turned. How small assumptions became official reports. How narratives were written before facts were checked. "Officer," the man said quietly, "you are making a mistake." Palmer shook his head. "No. You are. And unless you want this to get worse, you're going to explain exactly why you're here." Neither of them moved. The courthouse doors loomed behind them, symbols of justice carved in stone, watching as something deeply unjust began to unfold. He had not always worn pressed slacks or carried a leather briefcase. Marcus Ellison grew up on the south side of Columbus in a 2-bedroom apartment above a closed-down grocery store. His mother worked nights as a nursing assistant. His father disappeared before Marcus learned to read. What stayed with him were not speeches about justice, but the quiet routines. Homework at the kitchen table. Law books borrowed from the public library. His mother sleeping in a chair before her next shift. Marcus learned early that rules mattered, but only if someone was willing to enforce them fairly. In high school, while other kids memorized plays and stats, Marcus memorized court cases. Miranda v. Arizona, Terry v. Ohio. He liked the language. Precise, cold, unemotional. Law did not care how you felt. It cared what you could prove. He earned a scholarship to Ohio State, then law school, then an internship at the state Supreme Court. Not a clerkship handed out through connections. An earned position, background checks, security clearances, letters of recommendation signed by judges whose names appeared in textbooks. For 7 years, Marcus Ellison arrived at the courthouse before most people noticed the sun was up. He reviewed briefs, drafted memoranda, cross-checked citations that would later decide appeals, sentences, and lives. His name never appeared on rulings, but his fingerprints were everywhere. He believed in the system even when the system made no promises to him. Officer Daniel Palmer's story followed a different path. Palmer joined the force at 23. Third-generation police. His father had worn the same uniform, his grandfather before him. Policing in his family was not a job. It was identity. Authority passed down like heirlooms. His record looked clean on paper. Commendations for proactive stops. Notes about strong command presence. But buried beneath were complaints. Stops without clear cause. Friction with civilians who questioned him. Each complaint marked not sustained. Insufficient evidence. No body camera violation. No discipline. Supervisors described him as confident. Direct. Not afraid to assert control. Control mattered to Palmer, especially in spaces that symbolize power. Government buildings, courthouses, places where he believed order depended on people knowing their place. That morning, Palmer had been dispatched for routine courthouse patrol. Visibility, deterrence. A slow shift. Until he saw Marcus, a black man standing alone on the steps. Briefcase, calm posture, no badge visible. Palmer's brain filled in gaps faster than training manuals ever warned him about. When Marcus said he worked there, Palmer did not hear credentials. He heard challenge. "You don't look like you work here." In Palmer's mind, courthouse staff had a look, and Marcus did not match it. As Palmer pressed him, Marcus felt something familiar settle in his chest. Not fear. Calculation. He had seen this dynamic from the other side of the bench. How authority reacted when questioned politely. How tone not facts became the issue. He knew arguing law on courthouse steps rarely ended well. But silence felt like surrender. Officer Marcus said, "I am a state Supreme Court clerk." Palmer laughed once, short and sharp. "Yeah, and I'm the governor." A man near the entrance slowed completely now. A woman adjusted her phone camera, angled just enough to capture faces. The courthouse clock ticked loudly above them. Marcus reached into his coat, slowly narrating every movement. "I'm going to retrieve my identification." Palmer's hand snapped up. "Stop. Keep your hands where I can see them." They stayed there, visible, open. This is not how this is supposed to work, Marcus thought. Not here. Not on these steps. Palmer stepped closer. His voice dropped, but the edge sharpened. "Last chance. Explain why you are here, or I will remove you from the property." "Remove me on what grounds?" Marcus asked. "For refusing to comply." The words were heavy with implication. Non-compliance. A term flexible enough to cover almost anything. Palmer radioed in, his voice controlled. "Male subject refusing lawful orders, possible trespass." Marcus felt the absurdity of it press in. Trespass. On the building he helped operate. On the steps he crossed daily. On the institution he served. He thought of the judges upstairs reviewing motions that would cite his research later that day. Thought of the irony. The distance between law as written and law as practiced. Palmer reached for his cuffs. That was when someone spoke from behind them. "He works here." An older white man in a gray suit. Court staff. ID badge clipped openly to his lapel. Palmer turned. "You know him." The man nodded. "That's Marcus Ellison, Supreme Court clerk, 3rd floor, criminal appeals." Palmer froze, not fully, just enough. Marcus did not smile. He did not gloat. He simply stood there as the pieces finally aligned. The briefcase, the calm, the refusal to explain himself. Palmer's face flushed. He took a step back, eyes flicking to the phones now openly raised. The story had shifted, and he knew it. "I need you to wait here," Palmer said quickly. "For what?" Marcus asked. "For verification." Marcus said nothing. He didn't need to anymore. The truth was already walking toward them through the courthouse doors. Palmer did not lower his voice. He raised it. "Stand right there," he said. "Do not move." Marcus stayed exactly where he was. The courthouse steps were suddenly crowded with intention. People were no longer just passing through. They were watching. A woman in a dark coat stopped beside a pillar and lifted her phone fully now. A delivery driver across the street leaned against his truck, recording openly. The plaza had shifted from routine to spectacle. Marcus reached into his coat again, slower this time, stopping halfway. "I have identification," he said. Court issued. "I said don't move," Palmer snapped. "You're not reaching for anything." Marcus let his hand fall back to his side. The folders in his briefcase pressed against his leg. Inside were drafts he had stayed up past midnight finishing. Citations that would be read aloud in chambers later that morning. Work that mattered. None of it mattered here. Palmer paced half a step back and forth, eyes darting to the phones, then back to Marcus. His jaw worked as if chewing on something bitter. Control was slipping, and he could feel it. "You people always want to argue," Palmer said. "Always think the rules don't apply to you. A murmur rippled through the small crowd. Not loud, just enough to register. Someone whispered, "This is crazy." Someone else shook their head. Marcus spoke again, steady. "Officer, I am not resisting. I am not interfering. I am standing on public steps of my workplace." Palmer radioed in again. "Dispatch, I need confirmation. Subject claims employment with the Supreme Court." The radio crackled. "Copy. Stand by." Stand by meant time, and time meant witnesses. A woman in a clerk badge stepped closer now, stopping a few feet away. She hesitated, then spoke. "I see him every day. He works upstairs." Palmer turned sharply. "Ma'am, stay back. This does not concern you." "It concerns all of us," she replied quietly. Palmer's face hardened. He pointed toward the edge of the plaza. "I need everyone to clear back." No one did. Phones stayed up. A man zoomed in on Palmer's name tag. Someone across the street narrated softly into their camera, describing what they were seeing. A black man being questioned for standing at a courthouse. Officer refusing ID. Claims he works there. Marcus felt the familiar calculation returned. Each word spoken now was evidence. Each command, each refusal, each raised voice. He cataloged it automatically the way he did in briefs. Sequence, tone, justification, or lack of it. Palmer stepped closer again. "If you are lying to me, this gets real serious real fast." Marcus met his eyes. "I am not lying." That answer seemed to anger Palmer more than anything else. He reached for his cuffs again, fingers curling around cold metal. "Last warning," Palmer said. "You will comply. Comply with what Marcus asked. You have not told me what law I am violating." The crowd reacted to that. A few audible gasps. A sharp intake of breath. The question cut through the tension because it was simple and unanswered. Palmer froze, hands still on the cuffs. His radio crackled again. "Dispatch confirming. Subject is listed as State Supreme Court Clerk. 3rd floor, access level confirmed." The silence that followed was absolute. Palmer's hand dropped from his belt. His posture shifted, not relaxed, but recalibrated. He glanced around at the phones, the witnesses, the clerk badge, the courthouse doors now opening behind them as more staff stepped out. Marcus did not move. He did not speak. He let the moment sit where it belonged. Palmer cleared his throat. "All right, there's been a misunderstanding. No one accepted that." Marcus spoke softly. "Officer, you demanded I explain my presence. I complied. You refused to listen." Palmer avoided his eyes. "You're free to go." Marcus looked past him up the steps toward the doors he had been delayed from entering. He took one step forward, then another. The crowd parted slightly, not for Palmer, but for him. Behind him, phones stayed raised, capturing the end of something that should never have begun. Palmer did not let Marcus walk inside. "Sir, wait right there," he said again, the words coming out faster now, tighter. "I need you to stay put while I sort this out." Marcus stopped halfway up the steps. The courthouse doors were less than 20 feet away. He could see the security desk through the glass. Officers he knew by name. People who greeted him every morning. The normal rhythm of his day was right there, close enough to touch and still unreachable. "Sort what out?" Marcus asked. Palmer stepped in front of him, blocking the path. "I said you're free to go from this area. You're not entering the building yet." The crowd reacted immediately. A sharp wave of disbelief. Someone muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." Phones tilted higher. The moment that should have ended was now being stretched into something uglier. Marcus felt the shift before it happened. That tightening in the air. When authority realizes it has overplayed its hand but refuses to retreat cleanly. Officer Marcus said, "Measured, you have no legal basis to detain me." Palmer's jaw clenched. "I'm not detaining you. I'm securing the scene." There it was, the phrase. Vague enough to justify anything. Heavy enough to sound official. Palmer reached out and placed a hand on Marcus's arm. Not rough, not yet, but deliberate. Everything slowed. Marcus felt the pressure through his coat sleeve. The chill of morning stone under his shoes. The sound of blood moving in his ears. He thought of every case he had ever summarized where that single moment, that single touch changed everything. "Do not touch me," Marcus said. Palmer tightened his grip. That was when the phones erupted. Audible gasps. Someone shouted, "Don't touch him!" A woman's voice cut through, "This is illegal." Palmer reacted instantly. His training took over. Or what he believed was training. He twisted Marcus's arm behind his back in one smooth motion. The world narrowed. Marcus's briefcase slipped from his hand and hit the stone steps with a dull thud. Papers spilled out, sliding across granite. Court seals visible. case numbers, official documents scattering at the feet of strangers. Palmer pulled Marcus's wrists together. The metal cuffs snapped closed. The sound was sharp, final, echoing off the courthouse walls. Marcus did not shout. He did not resist. His jaw tightened as the cold steel bit into his skin. He focused on breathing evenly, on staying upright, on not giving Palmer anything that could be written later as resistance. "You are under temporary detention," Palmer said loudly for failure to comply. Failure to comply with what Marcus asked, his voice steady, despite the pain in his shoulders. Palmer did not answer. He guided Marcus down the steps, one hand on the cuffs, one between his shoulder blades. The crowd parted in stunned silence. Someone was crying quietly. Someone else cursed under their breath. A man near the front spoke clearly into his phone. "They're cuffing him. At the courthouse. He works there. I saw his badge earlier." Palmer opened the back door of the cruiser. The interior smelled of disinfectant and old coffee. Plastic seat. No handles. Designed for control, not comfort. Marcus was lowered inside. The door closed with a heavy click. Inside the car, the sounds of the plaza became muted, distant. The flashing lights painted the interior blue, then red, then blue again. Marcus sat still, hands cuffed in front, now resting on his knees. He stared straight ahead. He thought of the irony. That he had helped draft language about unlawful detention. That he had cited precedent warning against exactly this moment. That none of that mattered when perception overrode proof. Outside, Palmer stood, rigid, radio pressed to his shoulder. His voice was low now, controlled, requesting supervisor, confirming employment again. The edge of panic crept in despite his effort to suppress it. Marcus watched through the rear window as more courthouse staff gathered. Security officers approached. One of them recognized him immediately. "What's going on?" the guard asked. Palmer turned slightly away. "Administrative issue." The guard looked into the cruiser. Their eyes met. Recognition flashed, followed by something like disbelief. "Oh my God," the guard said quietly. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, not in fear, in calculation. This had crossed a line, and everyone knew it. The car door stayed closed, the cuffs stayed on, and the injustice, no longer theoretical, had become impossible to ignore. The door to the cruiser opened again 20 minutes later, not abruptly, carefully, as if everyone involved suddenly understood how fragile the situation had become. A man in a dark suit stood beside Palmer. No uniform, no weapon, just a courthouse badge clipped to his belt and a phone still in his hand. Behind him was a woman Marcus recognized immediately. Chief Justice Eleanor Whitman, the highest judicial authority in the building. Early 60s, steel gray hair, calm expression sharpened by controlled anger. "Marcus," she said, her voice steady but unmistakably cold. Palmer stiffened, his face drained of color. Chief Justice Whitman leaned slightly to look into the back of the cruiser. Her eyes moved from the cuffs to Marcus's face, then back to Palmer. "Remove the handcuffs, now." Palmer hesitated for half a second. That half second was recorded from 3 angles. "Yes, ma'am," he said quickly. The cuffs came off. The metal clicked open. Marcus flexed his wrists slowly, feeling blood rush back into his hands. He stepped out of the cruiser. The plaza was silent. Even the phones had stopped narrating. Everyone was waiting. Chief Justice Whitman turned to Palmer. "Do you have any idea who you just detained?" Palmer swallowed. He nodded once. "State Supreme Court Clerk, Criminal Appeals Division. You demanded that a senior clerk explain his presence at his place of employment," she said. "Then you ignored verification. Then you put him in handcuffs on the courthouse steps." Palmer tried to speak. Chief Justice Whitman raised one finger. "Stop." She turned to Marcus. "Are you injured?" "No, Your Honor," Marcus said. But his wrists were red, the marks visible to everyone. She nodded once, then she turned back to Palmer. "This incident is no longer a misunderstanding," she said. "It is a documented violation." Palmer's radio crackled uselessly at his shoulder. He did not answer it. Chief Justice Whitman looked at the phones surrounding them, then at the courthouse security chief. "I want copies of every camera angle, internal and external, immediately." The security chief nodded. "Already happening." She turned again to Palmer. "You are relieved of duty effective immediately. Remain on scene. Do not leave." Palmer's mouth opened, closed. He nodded. Marcus picked up his briefcase. Papers were gathered by strangers and handed back to him. Someone apologized quietly. Someone else shook their head in disbelief. Chief Justice Whitman walked beside Marcus toward the doors. As they passed Palmer, she stopped one last time. "You don't get to decide who belongs here based on how they look," she said. "That decision is above you. And now so are the consequences." Inside the courthouse, the doors closed softly behind them. Outside, the video was already spreading. By noon, the video was everywhere. The clip began with Palmer demanding an explanation. It ended with Marcus Ellison in handcuffs beneath the seal of the state Supreme Court. Between those moments were raised voices, ignored verification, red wrists, scattered court documents. It spread across social media faster than any official statement could catch up. By 1:40 p.m., it had crossed 1 million views. News vans lined the street outside the courthouse. Reporters replayed the footage frame by frame, freezing on Palmer's hand, gripping Marcus's arm, zooming in on the courthouse seal above them. Legal analysts appeared on split screens, pointing out violations in calm, clinical language. Unlawful detention, lack of reasonable suspicion, improper use of restraints. Inside the building, Marcus sat in a quiet office with Chief Justice Whitman and 2 attorneys from the state legal counsel. A recorder sat on the table between them. Everything was documented now, every word, every pause. Marcus described the encounter once. Clearly, chronologically, he did not embellish. He did not editorialize. He didn't need to. The facts were heavy enough. That afternoon, the police department placed Palmer on administrative leave pending investigation. By the next morning, Internal Affairs opened a formal review. Body camera footage, dispatch logs, training records, complaint history. Patterns emerged quickly. Prior complaints surfaced. Stops that escalated without cause. Civilians asked to justify their presence. Each one closed quietly. Each one explained away. Until now. Marcus filed a federal civil rights lawsuit 3 days later. False detention. Violation of constitutional rights. Abuse of authority. The filing cited timestamps directly from the viral video. Screenshots. Witness affidavits. Court security logs confirming his access level and employment. The city attorney reviewed the case and knew what it was. Indefensible. Public pressure mounted. Protests formed outside the courthouse, not loud, not destructive, just persistent. Signs held steady, cameras rolling, explain his presence. He worked there. Palmer's name was released in the press. His record followed. The union declined to comment. Supervisors were called before oversight committees. Training protocols were questioned. Early warning systems were exposed as paperwork without teeth. 6 weeks later, Palmer was terminated. The termination letter was brief. Violations of department policy, unlawful detention, failure to de-escalate, conduct unbecoming an officer. His appeal lasted less than 10 days. The lawsuit settled 4 months later. The amount was confidential, but sources confirmed it was substantial. Mandatory policy changes were not. The department announced new rules. Verification requirements near government buildings. Body camera activation protocols. Bias training. Oversight expansion. Marcus returned to work the following Monday after settlement. Same steps, same doors, same seal above him. But nothing felt the same. He kept doing the work he had always done. Quiet, precise, necessary. Outside, the video continued to circulate. A permanent record. Not just of injustice, but of accountability when someone refused to disappear quietly. Justice had not arrived dramatically. It arrived methodically. And it stayed. What happened on those courthouse steps was not complicated. It only felt complicated because authority often hides behind vague language. Police do not have the legal right to demand that someone explain their presence in a public place without reasonable suspicion of a crime. Standing, waiting, walking into work. None of these are crimes. The Fourth Amendment is clear on this point. Detention requires articulable facts, not instincts, not discomfort, not assumptions shaped by appearance. Marcus Ellison did nothing wrong. He did not refuse lawful orders because no lawful order existed. He did not obstruct. He did not resist. He exercised the same right every American has to exist in public without justification. The phrase failure to comply is often used to retroactively justify unlawful actions. It sounds procedural, neutral, but it has no power if the original command was illegal. Courts have ruled on this repeatedly. Compliance is not required when an officer exceeds their authority. This case also exposes how bias operates quietly, not through slurs or overt hostility, but through expectations. Who looks like they belong? Who looks like staff? Who looks suspicious? Bias fills in gaps faster than evidence ever could. The officer saw a black man on courthouse steps and asked a question he would not have asked someone else. Explain your presence. That question alone reveals the assumption that someone must earn the right to stand where others are presumed to belong. For viewers watching this unfold, there are practical lessons. If you are questioned, stay calm. Speak clearly. Do not match aggression with aggression. Ask what law you are suspected of violating. Ask if you are being detained. These questions matter. They create a record. If you can safely record, do so. Video preserves truth when memory becomes flexible. Narrate calmly. Time. Location. Names. What is happening and what is not happening. If you are detained unlawfully, document everything afterward. Write it down while details are fresh. Seek legal counsel. Do not assume the system will correct itself without pressure. Accountability often requires persistence. Most importantly, understand that dignity does not come from permission. Marcus Ellison did not become worthy because of his title. He was worthy before anyone knew who he was. This story is uncomfortable because it shows how close injustice can come to normality, how easily it can happen in broad daylight, how quickly it can be excused if no one is watching. But it also shows something else. That documentation matters. That witnesses matter. That law, when enforced properly, still has teeth. The question is not whether this could happen again. It will. The question is whether next time someone will be ready to see it clearly and refuse to look away.